Wow, this is really cool, very, very exciting for me personally. Thanks for everybody for joining us. I know we're close to the end of the day. Thanks for hanging in there, but I think this is going to be a really interesting and insightful panel for you. I want to be super clear. The title of this panel is Women in Leadership, but it's not. This is Lessons in Leadership with some really kick-ass founders and CEOs that just happen to be women. So,
second that.
Very important to clarify that up front. So just really quick introduction for those that haven't met me before. My name is Max Powers. I am the Chief Operating Officer for CreatorIQ. I'm also responsible for many in the room have interacted with the team, the customer experience team. So if you have a CSM, a client partner, have interacted with product support, have gone through post-sales onboarding and implementation, or have worked with our services team, that is also part of our organization. So super proud, a little shout out to those team members because they're awesome. Yeah, so with that, I was gonna let the panelists introduce themselves because I don't feel like I can do them quite the justice that they deserve. So I'd love to have you guys do introductions. And since this is a panel on leadership, let's start with the one word that best describes your leadership style.
Okay, I guess I have to go first. So I'm Christiane Pendarvis, and I am the co-CEO of Pattern Beauty, and this is my ninth day on the job. So, thank you. I share that title with Miss Tracy Ellis Ross, the founder of the brand, but this is my first time in beauty. I'm actually an apparel executive, is where I've spent the vast majority of my career. So prior to joining Pattern, I was co-president of Savage X Fenty. And no, I don't have a thing for celebrities, just happenstance. But I'm really proud to be here today. And I think the one word that describes my leadership style is actually humility.
Love it, and I'm gonna have more questions on that. Excellent. Gregg?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Gregg Renfrew, and I am the founder of Beautycounter. Thank you. For those of you who aren't as familiar with Beautycounter, we really pioneered the clean beauty movement and worked toward a mission of getting safer products into the hands of everyone by advocating tirelessly for cosmetic reform, using commerce as an engine for change, and powering up a huge group of women and men who wanted to educate the consumer on the need for safer ingredients. I think in terms of my leadership style, God, that's a good question. I would say probably transparency. I try to be super direct and transparent with people at all times. Not always perfect, but I do believe in direct, open, honest dialogue.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amanda Baldwin. To explain the awkward introduction, I am living through a life transition right now. For the last 7 incredible, magical years, I've led Supergoop, so I hope everybody has their sunscreen on and will continue to have their sunscreen on when I sort of take over as the CEO of Olaplex, starting in very soon. So that's the transition that I'm living through. So I have lots of old friends and new friends in this audience. My leadership style is that I don't believe in having a style. I think that it's not about one answer. Every situation is different. Every human is different. Every team is different. So I guess agility would be my word.
Ooh, agility. Okay, I love that. I will say that one of the panelists, I had spoken with one of your former employees, and they told me that inspiring was how they would describe your leadership style. So I thought that was really, really cool to share. They proactively reached out to me to share that. That about you, so I thought that was pretty cool.
I would hopefully not say inspiring is my style. They'd say arrogance. Thank you.
No, it was very positive. So really fun. So obviously you guys have incredible track records, phenomenal careers. But I'm curious, is there something that very early on that you learned, maybe a mistake that you made, or just something that you learned early on that helped shape the style or the approach that you use in leading, people and or your companies?
Yeah, I'll go first on that one. There have been so many things, lots of examples to choose from in terms of mistakes made. Probably one of the most notable ones, I was running the men's business at Old Navy, billion-dollar business, fifth largest business within the Gap Inc. portfolio. And I was running merchandising, inventory management, leading the big cross-functional team for that business. And it was an interesting adjustment in trying to manage some of my direct reports. And I had a real conflict with one of them. I was like, I don't understand how this person is operating. And what I really realized in that moment, and I think it gets at what you were saying, Amanda, around agility, is this person was very, very process-oriented. And I would give this person a task, a goal. They would come back and say, well, should I approach it this way? Should I approach it that way? Who do I need to talk to first? And I was like, I don't know. I don't care. However you want to do it. Well, that's because my style is I'm very action-oriented, and I'm very competitive and goal-oriented. So when someone gives me a task, then I was like, great. I'm clear on what's expected. Get out of my way, and I'll figure out how to do this. And so what I really learned in trying to manage that person, and I think we all have a predisposition to hire who looks like us, right? So I had hired people who were equally as goal-oriented and results-oriented as I was. When I had this person who wasn't that, I really struggled with managing that person. And we didn't have a great relationship, and I was disappointed in some of the results that they were delivering, and they were also disappointed in me as a leader. So I'd say what I learned from that moment, and this comes back to my word of humility, is I have to lead people based on who and where they are. And so I have to be humble around that. Everyone's not going to be motivated the same way that I am motivated. And I seek first to really understand a person and an individual, because at the end of the day, when you lead a large organization, there are very few jobs in that organization that I personally can actually do. Right? So now I'm in the beauty space. I can't develop beauty product. I'm not a chemist. I don't have that background. I don't know how to design packaging. That you can go through a very long list of things that I don't personally know how to do, which means I have to unlock the power of the people of the organization to be effective and successful. That's where humility comes from me. That's where the idea of meeting people where they are and delivering what they need to be inspired and motivated and successful, that's my role as a leader.
That's great. I think, so Amanda, you kind of had a similar response. Is that anything that you want to add from that angle?
Yeah, I'll second the notion that the most humbling, there's many humbling parts about our jobs, but one of them is certainly realizing that you can't actually do anything. And my favorite story from spring of 2020, and folks on my team know that my son is often a source of inspiration, and he comes over to me one day and he says, "Mom, you don't do anything. You just sit on Zooms all day." And he was actually quite right, but the point of the story is really that leadership is about hiring and inspiring people who do everything that you could possibly do 10 times better, and often things that you don't even know what they are. And it's sort of the magic of it. And it really, I think, as one's career evolves, learning that and learning to let go and learning to let other people be great at what they do is a transition that I've seen so many people on my own team go through and, have a lot of conversations about. The other thing is, leadership is an evolution, and I think it's a skill. I really believe the other piece of advice that I got along the way was spend as much time learning to be a great leader as you do to be a great marketer or a great, here we are all studying how to be great at influencer marketing. Put as much time into being a great leader, and that's how you get great. It's like anything else in life. So my office and my house is stacked full of books and podcasts and all sorts of other things that, now I'm reading about how to onboard effectively. And so, I think take it with the same sort of effort that you put into the rest of your career, and you will become great at it too.
That's
great. I need the name of that book.
I'll give it. Yeah, we'll trade notes.
Amazing. Gregg, anything from you that maybe you learned along the way, that really helped shape your leadership style?
Well, I think that, like both of you said, we've all made a million mistakes, and anyone that thinks that they can get anywhere in any career without making tons of mistakes is just kidding themselves. I think, I always say that it really doesn't matter what business you're in the business of people. It really doesn't matter. And it's always and always will be about the people. And I think that one of the mistakes I've made along the way is trying to always be, and this is maybe tends to be more of a woman, as a woman, I do this more, but I've seen men do this as well, which is to be a strong leader, you need to gain consensus and to listen to people and to serve your community or your subordinates or whatever. But at the end of the day, like trying to keep everyone happy all of the time just doesn't work. And I think certainly when I was CEO for Beautycounter for many years, in the beginning, I was trying to keep everyone happy. But what I realized, I was being really, really ineffective in leading in that way because no one was ever happy. And what I learned over time to do was to say, I'm leading, I'm at the head of this train. This is my job, is to lead us. Like the train's leaving the station. You can either disagree and commit, or you can just commit, but we're leaving the station and we're going this direction. And I need you to either take a leap of faith or to choose not to. But what you can't do is just try to keep everyone happy all the time. And I see people do it time and time again, and I see women do it time and time again because they're scared of being conceived as being tough or a bitch or whatever. But actually, if you're clear and concise in your communication, if everyone knows what your expectations of them are, and you're showing them the direction forward, they'll either agree to commit or not. But I really think it helps a lot when you're comfortable not always being liked. And it's the same way, like I would say, some of you guys are probably way younger than me, but with my children, I would say my job is not to make you be, I'm not here to be your best friend every day. I'm here to make you be the best version of yourself, which means I'm going to have difficult conversations with you sometimes. And sometimes we're not going to agree on things, but I promise you I have you in mind every step of the way. And I think that's the same thing in leading organizations.
That's great. Okay, so I'll start with you, Amanda, on the next question. The original proposed question was, how do we cultivate an industry of women leaders and uplift them? Of course, with the tone we're kind of setting with this conversation, I think it's really more about tapping into young talent, identifying it early, and creating opportunities. So I'm curious, is there any approach or style that you have in identifying that talent, uplifting people, bringing them along for the ride, or any approach that you've used that's maybe worked?
I mean, there's nothing I love more than like someone who is young and bright and hungry and eager to try out a lot of things. It's something that I just take such a joy in. I think there's things that you can do one-on-one. I try and spend as much time as possible with my team, but I also am known for kind of taking every phone call and trying to offer people career advice along the way. I think it's also about the company that you create and the sort of culture that you build, and having that be a place where, I think it's my most important job is to create a company where people will have a period of their career that they will look back on and be like, this was the most amazing period. And that takes a lot of things. That takes investing in talent, that creates what kind of environment you create, creating opportunities. And to what Gregg was saying, like, having everybody know that everything, you might not always agree with every decision, but every decision comes from a place of what's best for your people. So yeah, some thought.
Nice. And Christiane?
Yeah, I agree a lot of what Amanda said. I think it's really important to have very explicit conversations about people management, team management, aside from whatever your normal conversations are around the business or the functional role. That's number one. You have to create space and time in the same way, that you were talking about spending time to develop your leadership skills. So more senior leaders have to carve out that time for junior level talent. And then I try to have really frank conversations with people about what does it mean to move up. You can be incredibly successful in your functional role. That does not mean that you're going to be a great manager or a great leader. The skills look very, very different. You are no longer the individual contributor producing work. You're trying to manage and inspire and help support and guide someone else who is producing the work. So it's always funny when I hear people first take on becoming managers, right? And so they're an individual contributor. They're like, I want to get promoted. I want to get promoted. I was like, okay, be careful what you ask for. And then you start managing people. And they're like, oh my God, I have to spend so much time with this person. I was like, exactly, that's what being a manager is. So I try to have really frank conversation, and that transition continues all the way up through. Once you master managing individuals, then you start managing managers, then you start managing teams. It just gets more complex, and more of your time is really spent around the organization and the people and less on the work of the work. And so I try to make sure as I'm talking to young talent that they really understand what that means and what it means to be successful in those roles. Because the thing that got you where you were at that moment in time functionally is not what's going to get you to be successful and to sit in any of the seats that the three of us have sat in.
I think we're all laughing about first-time managers when they have that moment of like, oh my God, humans are hard.
I always say I'm going to write an apology letter to the first person I ever managed because, oh my gosh, I did not get that right. So it goes both ways.
There's a few books on the shelf for that. Amazing. Greg, anything you want to add?
It's somebody said, I was in the caravan, actually a girl that worked under me. Many years ago, I was a consultant to a brand called Intermix. I think many of you in this room may have shopped the brand. I was there with the founders as they were trying to scale the business. And I remember, I actually don't remember. This is the other thing as a young manager. Life is really long also, so be careful how you manage people 20, 30 years, because it always comes back to bite you. And so I'm at this bar in the Caribbean on a Christmas vacation. This girl comes up to me and, she's like, you are such a bitch. And I was like, whoa. And it was like, she married this friend of mine. And I was like, what did I do? She's like, you rode me so hard when I was like a young marketing executive. And I was like, are you better? She's like, yes, but you were so rude. And I was like, oh my God. So I bring it up to say that we do make a lot of mistakes when we're young because you're like, I am very direct. And I think I learned also how to be direct and not necessarily come across as being really critical all the time, but actually pulling out. And so I think as I've gotten older, I think that what I look for in younger people or less seasoned, because maybe they're not younger, but they're just less experienced, is people who are curious, people who have a high level of humility, and people that are willing to go dig deep to find the confidence that they need to take those gems and are not scared of asking the questions. If you don't know what you're doing when you step into a new role, you have to shamelessly rely on those around you and pull information. And I think a lot of people that I've seen over the years, they either don't have the confidence to step up, and so they're waiting for their manager to kind of do it for them, or they go into a new role with arrogance because they're too scared, again, to admit that they don't know what they're doing, and they think they've got it, but the playbook from one company is not necessarily the playbook to the next. And so I've tried in earnest now to help people find their strength, to realize that they've got this and not be as afraid of either asking questions or making a lot of mistakes, because we've all done that. And by the way, I'm friends with that girl now. So just I made up, many years later with her, but it was a good wake-up call.
From that description to being described as inspiring is definitely great to hear. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Switching gears slightly, but kind of along the same path, we talked a little bit about mentorship and just that importance. I know some of you have expressed how important that is to you, either within your network or within your company itself. So I'm not going to choose all of you to answer. Whoever feels compelled. Is there anything in particular that you do from a true mentorship perspective, especially outside of the organization? Because I think there's so many people to help that have questions and really look to you for advice. So I'm curious, is there any approach that any of you take?
I mean, I think mentorships evolve very organically. I think that it's a word that we all sort of hold in esteem and say, I need a mentor. And when you mention that question, I have a flash of faces that go in front of me of people who have been with me from really the beginning of my career. And they were never assigned to me as a mentor. It was never like, okay, here's your it was just people that I really connected with and saw me and understood me. I've made a lot of effort to invest in relationships. I think that's the other thing, is none of these things just happen. A mentor doesn't give you advice because you call them at a moment of kind of big decision. It happens over time, and it's hours and hours spent together. And I think one piece of advice that someone also gave me once, I think is great, is sort of have a personal board of directors. Think of them and the variety of people who come from a lot of different perspectives, and I've been in a lot of different types of companies and different types of roles. You talk to them about different things, and so you do kind of develop that. I think hopefully the other message from up here is it's not all bad to get older. you get a little bit of perspective, and you build up this sort of Rolodex of people that mean a lot in your life, and that comes from investing over a lot of years.
I think it's interesting listening because we've talked a little bit about uplifting talent and then mentorship. But I think one of the things that I'm hearing as I'm listening is also just creating that safe space and empathy and like a safe place for people to ask you questions, whether it's lifting people up or creating a space for mentorship and making sure it's safe so people can ask those questions and be vulnerable so that you can help. It's so important, but not everybody takes the time, I think, as leaders to actually create that environment, which is very important, obviously.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think I'm an NPR junkie, and I was listening to something on NPR, and they were talking about listening and how people listen, and this idea of when someone comes to you and they want to talk about something, you have to ask them, what role do you want me to play in my listening? Am I listening just to be an ear? Are you wanting me to brainstorm with you solutions? And I think that's a really powerful way, particularly for more junior level people, to approach someone who's more senior, because that can be super intimidating. Like, I don't think I'm intimidating, but I hear, allegedly, I can be. Right? So I think coming in with here's what I'm looking to get, and just to be transparent and honest, I don't have a clear strategy, but I want to talk you through what I'm thinking and get some feedback, but setting that context for what is it that you want to accomplish in that conversation, I think helps the person who you're speaking with understand what role they need to play. And so that if someone comes to me, like say on my team, and was like, this isn't well thought out yet, but I need to bounce some ideas off of you, I'm not listening to them to evaluate, right? So I don't have the critical lens on if someone came to me and said, here's my final presentation, and like, this is the result. I'm going to listen with a different ear. So I think that's a really powerful thing as you think about how you want to approach some of these conversations with people who may be more senior than you.
And can I just add to that? Because I think one thing also is with people that are more senior or better known in the industry or whatever it might be, if you're asking someone for help, whether they're inside of your organization or not, I think it's also really nice to come in prepared for those conversations, not just in terms of how you want them to listen, because I completely agree, but I often find people say, would you be willing to spend a half an hour with me? And when you ask busy people to do that, and they're willing to do that, don't be like, hey, I'm just thinking about going into the beauty industry. What do you think? And that's not helpful for the person to mentor you. Be really specific. Like, this is what I'm struggling with. This is the homework I've already done. These are the companies I might want to work for, and I want to ask for that raise or whatever, so that you make that time useful for them as well as for you. Otherwise, you're just having a kind of nice, useless conversation, and you're not actually getting the mentorship from the person.
Yeah, so good. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but we're almost out of time. So I'm going to jump right to my last question, which is really just what's one piece of advice? Let's start with Amanda at the end. What's one piece of advice? We've got some incredible talent in here, some senior people, some junior people. What's one piece of advice that you would share as they're aspiring in their careers?
I'm going to go with two, if that's okay. My first is work hard. There are no shortcuts, and hard work does pay off. And the second is be kind. Life is just too short to do anything else.
I would say, I'm going to do two too. Sorry. I'm going to sort of build on what you just said. I always ask people when they come into Beautycounter, I always say, like, can you give this company your all for the period of time during which you're here, and ask the company to give you back as much as possible together to make it successful, so that when you go to your next place, you'll be that much more marketable and that much more knowledgeable. And I do think hard work is a critical component of success, and it's often overlooked. And then the other thing I would say is just there's no room in business for arrogance. And the minute you think you're super successful, I promise you can find someone who's more successful or smarter or more interesting. So just maintain humility. It will go so far in your career and in your relationships with people at large.
Yeah, I keep up the trend with two. don't mistake effort for output. They are very different things. And I find, particularly with younger people, you go through the activity of doing work, right? It's effort, I get it, and it's work, but you may sometimes overlook the output of that work and whether it was quality or not, or address the issue. Those are different things, right? Your leaders are actually evaluating you not just on the effort that you put in, but it's the output of what delivers. It's no different than when you got a test. You may have finished the test, but if you got all the answers wrong, you're still getting a 0, right? So take that back with you. And then I think the last thing is never miss an opportunity to learn. And what I mean by that, you're gonna make mistakes. I have made 1 million in my career. You can wallow in the valley of despair around the mistake, or you can say, what was it that I should be learning from what happened? Take that with you because that's preparing you to be successful in whatever comes next.
I don't know about you guys. I could sit here all day and ask a million more questions, but unfortunately our time is up. So I want to thank you guys obviously for coming, sharing your insights. Incredibly personal. It's amazing. So a round of applause just to wrap that.